Hi, I'm Heidi Rader. I'm with the University of Alaska Cooperative Extension Service. We're here at the Southeast Alaska Farmers Summit 2023. I'm here with John Krapek, and he is the owner of Juneau Greens and also Anchorage Greens as a partner, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his business and how he got started and what he grows. So, John, what got you excited about getting into growing greens?
Yeah, I guess I have always loved botany and plants and was pre-Juneau Greens getting my master's in forest ecology at UAF, but doing my research in Juneau, and before that kind of doing different botany related jobs. And I was about to graduate and applying for jobs with the Forest Service. And I was like, had always had this dream of farming and running an organic farm, or doing something growing food related to address environmental sustainability issues. And so I was like, okay, before I get a real job where I'm gonna kind of get locked in, I kind of want to take a risk and do something different. And so I had heard about people doing hydroponics in Alaska. This was in 2016 or so. And so then I just thought, wow, why is no one doing this in Juneau? No food is really grown here, and it's this huge opportunity. And so at that point, as I started to kind of express that interest around town, someone said, oh, you should talk to this guy, Trevor Kirchhoff, who is my business partner and knows a ton about hydroponic growing. And so we linked up and started talking and decided to launch Juneau Greens in 2017 is when we planted our first seeds.
What do you grow at Juneau Greens?
About half of what we grow is basil. And so we picked that for a few reasons. It grows really well hydroponically. It's just super easy to grow. It's a high value herb. People are willing to pay a premium for it, and it ships really poorly because it's a pretty fragile and delicate herb. And so we had this idea. We were like, okay, if we could just replace all the basil that is eaten in Juneau with what we grow, maybe that could be a cool little business. And I also was really interested in growing lettuce and just wanted to grow everything. And my partner Trevor was like, well, let's just do basil first, get going with that, and then we can expand. And so, yeah, now about half of what we grow is basil. We grow a lot of head lettuces, mostly butter lettuce to sell to restaurants. And then we grow a salad mix product, a bunch of leafy greens. We have a CSA greens box where people sign up, and every week they get a couple heads of lettuce, a bunch of leafy greens, and a bunch of herbs. And we just try to grow a lot of different variety and keep it interesting for that.
Awesome. Are you experimenting with anything new at this point?
Not really at this point. I'd say we're more trying to reduce what we're growing. And now we've basically have grown every seed. Our seed supplier is Johnny's Seeds, and on their website they have a little section called Hydroponic Performers. And so we just went on there when we were starting out and picked like every single variety and just tried them out. And we still are trying new stuff here and there, and our CSA is a great way to experiment with that. But in a way, we're trying to, now that we know what works, grow a narrower range of crops that works sense. Well.
Yeah, and kind of refine your process and maybe get your price point down a little bit, or
yeah.
And so it sounds like you're doing mostly wholesale.
Yeah, we do about, I'd say probably 75% wholesale, grocery stores and restaurants, and then 25% either our CSA or selling it through some local outlets that are not quite retail for us, but have better margins because they're for distributing produce. But actually in Anchorage Greens, where we expanded to in 2019, there we had learned that, wholesale is valuable for moving a lot of product, but we wanted to capture the whole retail dollar as much as possible. And so at our farm there, we decided to have this little storefront space, and there we do 100% of what we grow as subscription and direct to consumer out of our garden market. And that's kind of the future vision for Juneau Greens. If we can expand, we'd like to try to get our own storefront to interact with the customer more and sell everything direct to consumer.
Yeah, it would be, how does your pricing compare to, say what you would get in the grocery store? Is it comparable or more expensive or?
Yeah, that was a big thing that Trevor and I talked about early on, and we really wanted to try to grow something that was market competitive. And so we were like, okay, we're going to spend a little bit more growing it indoors with lights. Growing in Alaska is hard. We have to ship in all of our materials, but if we could cut out the shipping cost.
Right, and the loss along the way too.
Yeah, exactly. And so we've tried to, just sell products what they were going for at the grocery store. And we talked to chefs in town and asked what they pay. They were able to pull up their Cisco apps on their phones and tell us what they paid for these different products. But at this farmer summit that we're at, discussions have been going around of like, it's not good to compare yourself to grocery store prices because a lot of grocery stores sell produce at basically a break even or a loss, and it doesn't take into account, kind of fairness to doing business in Alaska, which is harder. And so I think if we were to do it all over again, I would, build in a little bit of a price premium, but we're able to do that when we can go direct to consumer and avoid wholesale.
Interesting. Very cool. And what would you say is like the biggest challenge in this business?
I think doing wholesale is challenging when the demand fluctuates. So in Juneau, wholesale demand is really strong in the summertime during the tourist season, and then almost just really dies down in the fall. And so the grocery stores and restaurants are a lot less busy. And when we're in continuous production agriculture where we're trying to grow and sell the exact same thing every week, and 1 week a restaurant is super busy and ordering more than they normally do, and then a few weeks later they're just dead, and it's kind of unpredictable. And we have it down a little bit now that we've been doing it for 5 years, but just fluctuating demand is hard. And so that's another reason we want to move to more of a CSA subscription model to build in that reliability.
That makes sense. And what is your growing setup? Is it a warehouse, or what type of hydroponic systems are you using?
Yeah, we're in a warehouse, a small warehouse. We're in Juneau. We're in about a 1,500 square foot warehouse. In Anchorage, it's about 5,000 square feet, but only half of that is used for growing. We use pallet racks, just like ones you might see at a Costco, kind of vertical pallet racks. And so we have 3 tiers of grow beds stacked on top of each other. And then we're using deep water culture hydroponics, where we just have these beds full of a nutrient solution that's recirculating, and the plants are floating on top of that solution.
So do you hope to expand in the future across the state, or what's your vision for the future?
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out right now. And right now I have 2 little kids. I have a 3-year-old and a 1 and 4-month-old. And so part of me wants to expand, like the demand is there. We have a really long waiting list for our CSA. Restaurants want more of what we can grow, grocery stores do, but just where I'm at personally, I'm kind of like, wow, it sounds kind of nice to just not get more busy right now. But I think in terms of the business, at some point we do really want to expand. We'd like to grow more in Alaska, and then as we've developed this kind of cool subscription model, we've even thought about it could be applicable in other areas that don't have year-round agriculture or access to fresh food easily. And so I think kind of to be determined would be a short answer.
What advice would you give to somebody who might want to start something like this in Alaska?
Yeah, I would say doing your kind of legwork up front to figure out your markets, who wants to buy your produce, what the prices will be, how much they would go through every week would be really useful, because we did a little bit of the opposite, where we kind of assumed there would be demand there, and so we planted a ton of basil, and then for 6 months to a year we were just like really working hard to find customers, and even though everyone says they want Alaska grown produce, it takes people a little bit of time to change and shift, and so we spent a ton of time just finding customers, and so I think doing some of that legwork ahead of time would be good. And then also just realizing that if you want to do year-round indoor production, it can really be like all-consuming. We have plants growing 365 days a year. It's hard to take a day off, hard to even take Christmas off when you have plants you have to check on. And so I guess really think about what you want, and think about what you want to sell, who you want to sell it to, and how you can structure something.
Great. And it's, do you have any hired labor to help, or?
We do. We have, in Juneau, we have one full-time employee, kind of a farm manager, Martin Dearway, who's been awesome. And then a few part-time people who we would like to eventually make full-time if we can expand. And then in Anchorage, we have a couple full-time employees and a part-time person as well. So.
Well, your business sounds awesome, and the lettuce is excellent. So
Thank you.
Congratulations, and thanks so much for sharing your knowledge and your information with us. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah.